Hello friends, I'm Fench and this is my Model 3 performance. Today we're doing another highway range test, but before we get started, I just want to check something as I keep hearing a scraping sound when I leave my driveway, so I want to know what exactly it is I'm hitting. As you see, I'm parking on a bit of an incline and the front bumper is kind of low to the ground. I just want to see if I'm possibly hitting the bumper, or if it's the bottom of the car, which wouldn't be great. Before heading out, I'm just going to reset the trip meter so we can monitor the energy consumption. One of the cool things about the latest software update is the auto drive selection. As you see, I just need to put my foot on the brake and the car already shifts into forward, knowing I probably don't want to reverse into my garage. Okay, now let's see what I'm scraping. Thank God it looks like it was just the mud flaps, but as you can probably tell, the car shouldn't sit much lower before we would hit the bottom of the car. Alright, enough playing around, let's get this range test going. This is going to be a two-part test. First I'll be doing the same route as my last hypermiling video, and then I'm heading to IKEA with the family. Another 200km trip which will give you guys a real-world example of a driving scenario. In this first part, I'll try and constantly drive a bit more than 120 km per hour. Of course, besides the sections with speed restrictions. During the family trip, we'll be doing a mix of everything, but mostly around 130, including a stretch of going 170, as after a long day trip, the kids started to get in a mood, and we just wanted to get back home as soon as possible. And here's a great example of how poorly the touchscreen indicators are placed. You really do have to fiddle around with your arms and take your attention off the road, which isn't ideal. It's probably just something you need to get used to. I'm just not quite there yet. As we're coming onto the Autobahn, our energy consumption is currently at 191 watt-hours per kilometre. I should however mention that this first part is a bit uphill, so don't think too much of that figure. We're also still early on. As can see from the time-lapse, we're flowing perfectly with traffic. After hundreds of thousands of kilometres experience on the Autobahn, going much faster than 120 isn't going to save you much time anyways. Usually there's an accident or just heavy traffic, so all the time you saved going 160 goes right out the window. The only times going really fast makes sense is when you have a really long drive and you know that there isn't going to be any kind of traffic. So something like early morning or really late evening, then you can really make time going fast. During regular hours though, not so much. A few lorries deciding to overtake each other is usually enough to let that VW Polo catch up to you again. And just like that, we've once again reached our halfway checkpoint. So how did we do? Well, it looks like we're at 163 watt-hours per kilometre. That's actually not too bad. I'd expected something around 190. However, knowing from my last range test, this part of the route is a bit more downhill, so we may have to adjust that number once we've driven the same way back again. Well, let's head off again then. I suppose this will now be the standard route I take whenever I'm going to test something relevant to range and efficiency. I would really love to do the same test with a BMW i4 M50. Perhaps one day my channel will grow big enough that Mr. BMW will be on the phone. Hey Fench, why don't you test our latest electric car? Well sure Mr. BMW, you can just send one over and I'll gladly have a go. made it back once again. Now, before we have a look at the figures, let me just quickly grab a coffee. You know what? Let me quickly show you the car from the outside because it is a fantastically good looking car, especially in this early evening lighting. I have to say, I always feel a bit weird walking around filming my car in public. I don't think I've ever seen anyone else do it. The pressure of going against the norm of society, I guess. I know white is a boring colour, and every Tesla is white. But this performance model with the black accent really makes it pop in a whole different way. Or maybe it's just because it's my own car and I'm looking at it differently. Now back with a coffee, let's have a look at the numbers. Any guesses before the reveal? If I had to guess, I would probably say around 175. Just based on our last test, as we also saw an increase in consumption after the way back. Now let's see, shall we? Our combined total for this test is 167 watt-hours. Wow, that's actually better than I expected. With 167 watt-hours per kilometre, that should give us a theoretical maximum range of 473 kilometres. That's not bad for this performance model, I think. Now let's see if these numbers hold up against a real-world test with the family on board. Before I head off, I just wanted to show you guys the auto shift function once again. Just put your foot on the brake, and it will automatically select the right direction for you. I know it's a gimmick, but still. The next day I packed the car, including some shelves we needed to return to IKEA, put our son in the child seat, and asked my girlfriend to drive. This would be her first time driving the Tesla, so I was curious to hear what she thought. And it would give me a chance to check out the rear seats. After a bit of difficulties explaining how to put the car into drive, we were soon ready to head out on a 200-kilometre long day trip for some real-world range and efficiency testing. In her defence, without knowing how the gear selector works, it's also not the most straightforward thing to have explained to you. We did finally manage in the end though, and a 2-hour-long road trip could now begin. After driving 98 kilometres, we arrived with an energy consumption of 157 watt-hours per kilometre. Given how we were driving, 157 watt-hours per kilometre is incredibly impressive. We decided to celebrate that by leaving the air condition running while we're inside, so when we get out, the car is still nice and cool. Such a great feature. After a bit of shopping, I carried on the driving. Next stop, IKEA. Now maybe it's just me, but even before getting an electric car, I said that I would never let an electric car be a hindrance for me parking anywhere or using my car any differently than I would do with a regular car. So even if I needed a charge to make the trip back, I would rather use a supercharger along the way than worry about a charger being available at IKEA. It's just too impractical a solution, as there's no certainty of a charger being free. After having returned a few items and added some new ones, we were ready to head back. Halfway back, our son fell asleep, and we decided to slow down to 110 kilometers per hour. But he unfortunately soon woke up and was hungry, so we decided to hurry back and drive a little faster, with around 170. This second part of the test is probably as close to reality as it could get, at least for us and how we use a car. So what was the consumption with this mixed driving style? Well, last stretch of 100 kilometers, we had 191 watt-hours, but we were also driving quite fast at the end. Looking at the total since the last charge, the average consumption has been a very decent 174. For a 500 horsepower car, with primarily faster speeds, around 130 to 140, even up to 170, I think it is very, very decent. What do you think? Now all there's left is to charge the car and get ready for the next great adventure. As always, if you like these types of videos, please do consider subscribing, as that helps me tremendously. Cheers.